more moments as we have our participants coming in. We are looking forward to having a discussion around making college attainable. So we'll just wait a few more moments until we have some more folks coming in. All right, well, I am gonna get us started because we have a great panel today, and I want to make sure we use every moment that we have available to us in this relatively short amount of time of 30 minutes. Welcome again to Education Now, sponsored by the Harvard Graduate School of Education. My name is Francesca Purcell. I'm Senior Lecturer and Faculty Co-Chair of Higher Education at HGSE. Just so you know, for Education Now, all of our episodes are recorded and you can find them on our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook page. So I am gonna cut right to the chase and have our panelists come up onto the screen, and I'm happy to introduce to you today our three panelists. We have Sue Dynarski. Sue is the Patricia Alberg Professor of Education here at HGSE. Her research focuses on understanding and reducing inequality in education. We have Yolanda Watson-Spiva, who is the president of Complete College America, which focuses on policies to support students and increase college completion rates. And I'm very thrilled that we are being joined by Quentin Jenkins. Quentin is a senior at Pitzer College, and we are really glad to have all three of our panelists with us today to talk about this very large topic of making college attainable. So, Sue, let's start with you. We'll start kicking things off. So we know, Sue, that affordability is a huge issue when it comes to college access. So, Sue, how can colleges lower their costs and make college more affordable to students and their families?
That is a great question. College is indeed more expensive for families than it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago. This is largely not about somehow college administrators are, just blowing the budget. It's more that who pays for education has shifted from taxpayers to individual families and students. So governments used to state governments in particular, used to put a lot more money into their community colleges, their public universities, and that kept tuitions low. I mean, think about it. When you go to primary school, you don't pay anything at all for your local public school, right? So it could be completely free. We have been ratcheting up the share of college costs that are paid by the students. And that is the main reason why we're seeing increased cost to students. So we cannot penny pinch our way back to 1965 in terms of the level of spending that we have to devote to instruction, for example, because this is a bigger picture of taxpayer decisions and budgetary decisions.
All right, so then, Sue, I'm thinking about some of your research and some of your writing, and one of the things you've explored quite a bit is this notion of free college, which is very much, I think, sort of been bandied about. Different states are trying different models. As we look to solutions around affordability, then, what's your take on free college? What do you like? What don't you like? What advice would you have going forward?
Well, it's an old idea, back in the day, and that day is not very long ago, community college was essentially free. My sisters went to UMass Boston. They're 10 years older than me, and they were paying like $60 a credit. I mean, parking was more expensive than the tuition was. Right. So, California, top-notch university system, and that was essentially free to students. So it's not like this is unworkable. We've done it in the past. It's a matter of political priorities. And the way it's been done in the past, which is basically that the tuition is low is probably the way to do it. Right now we are in this world, we've chosen this world of high prices, high sticker prices, and high aid. And in theory, that should have worked out just fine. But the research of the past 20 years has shown that especially low income, underrepresented, disadvantaged populations don't react to this net price that we've posited, which is the sticker price minus the aid they should get, because they don't know about what aid they're going to get. Systematically, we see people are misinformed about what the net price of college is going to be. And so we are not making effective use of our aid dollars. At a place like a community college where almost everybody would be eligible for enough federal aid and state aid to make tuition free anyway, then we should just make it free up front so that people can just respond to it that way. At institutions where that rely more on tuition revenue than from the individual student, we could do targeted free college. And I can talk about a program that I helped to launch at the University of Michigan that does just that. It gives students an upfront guarantee that they're going to get tuition paid for them. And it's had a huge impact on the decisions of disadvantaged students.
All right, let me come back to that. I want to probe you on that a little bit, but let me move over to Yolanda. Yolanda, you are the president of Complete College America. I don't know if everybody on the call knows what CCA is and what it's about. So can you tell us a little bit about its mission and purpose?
Yeah, so CCA is a bold national advocate for increasing college completion across the nation. And essentially, we do that by working with the states. We work with state systems. We work with the governors of each state, the state legislatures, and essentially try to make sure that policies are in place that help to facilitate the types of changes that Sue mentioned. And so we want to make sure that the policies, the perspectives, and the practices that happen in each state are really those that facilitate completion for students and create a pathway toward completion.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about like the completion rates? Like what are we talking about? Because they vary so much. So how do you even sort of think about college completion rates?
Yeah, so we have sort of stagnated as a nation, even though tuition costs have risen steadily. The completion rates are hovering at about just over 62%, right? But then when you disaggregate by race and by gender and then by socioeconomic status, we find declining rates in each of those subcategories. And so essentially, when we talk about closing the completion gap, we're talking about the difference between the completion rate at the highest level for every student, and then subtracting that from the gap, the completion rate for the other groups. And so when you think about that, we have a far more of a distance to go in terms of making sure that we're bringing everyone up just to 62%. So we're still not even aiming for the 100%. We're talking about just closing the gaps. And so that's what makes this work so difficult. And when you have things like a pandemic or natural disasters, other things that basically impede the progress, unfortunately, it doesn't help. And then sticker price, as we just discussed, of the cost of attending college is, of course, a major barrier for students to access and complete college.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sort of laying out some of those big issues. Let me, Quentin, I'm going to bring it over to you a little bit. So my understanding is that you're a first generation college student. So tell us a little bit about what led you into college. Tell us about that part of your journey first.
Yes, thank you for your question. So I went to a very under-resourced high school on the south side of Chicago. And so I remember upperclassmen actually came to one of my math courses and they told us about a Chicago Scholars program, which is a community college access program. And so Chicago Scholars works in 3 phases: college access, college success, and also college to career. And so specifically, being a part of the program with other academically ambitious students, we get matched with like mentors, a college counselor, and they also have various workshops every month. So I was a part of a program that told me the difference between a liberal arts college and also a big university, that helped me specifically see schools or see universities that I could see a fit there, or also work with like CSS Profile and FAFSA because I couldn't go to any family members because no one in my family had gone to college before. And so I do believe that Chicago Scholars, through mentorship, through college counseling, and also through the various workshops, that it was very pivotal in my trajectory to Pitzer.
Great, thanks for sharing that. So And Quentin, tell us a little bit, once you got to Pitzer, what were some of the things that kept you there? And what, if you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe what were some of the challenges along the way?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with what kept me here. 4 years. And so I think specifically when I first got on campus, I think the welcoming or the welcome community that I got from staff, faculty, administration, also students. I think that very early on, I met the college president at the time, Dr. Melvin Oliver, and he was very welcoming, letting me know, like, if you ever want to have a conversation, you can reach out to me. And just seeing that someone so high up in the school was just open to having those conversations and caring about like my specific experience at the college made me feel more welcome there. And additionally, there are a lot of I wouldn't say policies set in place. So when you first start at Pitzer, you get matched with like an academic guide. You have a resident assistant that helps you. So literally my first week of college, I had 3 people who I could count on. I could count on my academic guide. I could count on my mentor through a resident assistant. And I also could count on the college president to help me and help me navigate the college transition process.
Great, thanks. That sounds like it's been a really positive experience for you. So I'm going to come back to you because you alluded to this, but I'd really like you to spend a little bit of time talking about your research and findings about the Hale Scholarship Program, its implementation at the University of Michigan, and lessons that can be taken away by institutions across the country.
Sure. And the impetus for this program was persistent inequality in who goes to college. And in particular, who goes to, at the time that I did this work, I was at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, flagship in the state. And there's huge differences in who goes to the flagships. Even once you focus on those who have good academic preparation, you'll still see big differences in low income versus upper income by race and who's going to the flagships. And the flagships have got fantastic resources. They've got the resources we'd like all the other schools to have, in fact, and they tend to have very high graduation rates, in no small part because they've got fantastic resources. At least one barrier we know to students applying to places like the University of Michigan is that they think it's going to be too expensive. And that goes back to what I was saying about people being misinformed. We've got a financial aid system in which you don't really find out what your cost of college is going to be until you've applied to a college, been admitted to that college, and got an aid offer from that college. So after you've picked a college and gone through all the effort of applying, then eventually they'll let you know what the discount is, which is kind of crazy backwards when you think about it. If you really want to get more people to apply or come, you might want to advertise that up front. So, one solution to this is to sort of help people, walk them through this process in the way we were just hearing, through support services. The other is to try to make the process less daunting, right? So with policy, try to dismantle some of these barriers. One thing we know is that if somebody that in the US, we force people to go through proving they're poor constantly. So you got to prove it to get Medicaid and to get food stamps and to get free lunch in your grammar schools and your high schools. And so we aim to piggyback on that essentially in our program at the University of Michigan. We worked with the state of Michigan and identified students who were high achieving and who had been getting free and reduced price lunch while they were in school. And that's students that are basically near the poverty line, a multiple of the poverty line, but near it. And we could see from historical data at the university that such students were getting a free ride. So, increasing their aid wasn't what was needed. They already, if they applied and got in, they were going to get a free ride. So what we did was we took the information about them getting a free ride from the back end and pushed it to the front end. So did an outreach campaign to these students with the cooperation of the state and with the university, in which we made a commitment to them up front. If you get in, you're going to get free tuition and fees for 4 years. So, and the 4 years I think is important as well. Right now, we go year by year on that process that I described, where it's back end. It's also year after year after year. You have to go through it, so you don't know when you enter school what your 4-year cost is going to be. So this is, honestly, this is quite cheap. It doesn't cost much of anything at all because students are just getting the aid they were going to get anyway. but it changes behavior enormously. We tripled application rates. We more than doubled the share of these students who were attending the University of Michigan. So this is a way to do free college that's effective. I think we've got a good amount of research at this point that, you know, this sort of net price, high sticker price, high aid approach is not an effective route to free college. It just does not reach and affect the behavior of the people who are the targets of this aid.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Yolanda, so places like University of Michigan actually have pretty high completion rates. So, you know, we can take some comfort knowing students who are going there will have a pretty good shot at completion. But from the work you've been doing at CCA for open access institutions, for community colleges, what do you see as some of the most promising practices that are taking place on campuses across the country to increase completion rates?
Yeah, absolutely. So at CCA, we have been known for what we called our game changer strategies. These are the strategies that we know have really changed the game on behalf of students across the country. And because we have really now propagated them to about 18 strategies that sort of fall into 4 buckets. The first bucket is purpose. And so that's about aligning the college experience to each student's goals for the future. So in the purpose pillar, we're talking about first year experience, early career exploration, and then even if you're an adult learner engagement at an early stage. The second bucket is structure. So any of the programs and initiatives that help to build a course roadmap that make the path to a degree or the credential more valuable and aligned with workplace expectations. So we're working with things like meta majors, academic maps and milestones, math pathways, smart scheduling, and then of course the ability to stack credentials so that students who are going to earn while they learn are able to get micro credentials that can be stacked and built toward an associate degree or baccalaureate degree. The third pillar is momentum. So we're really talking about helping a student feel like they're actually in college once they're there. So they shouldn't be stuck on a track where they're not earning any credit for remedial courses or dev ed courses. We really want to make sure that we're designing multiple avenues for students to get started, earn credits faster, and then stay on track to graduate. So in this case, we're talking about strategies like competency-based credit, so credit for prior experience, multiple measures for the ways in which we count if students are even prepared for college and ready and what courses count, dual enrollment, of course, if they're in high school. And then, of course, we try to encourage students to take more credit, not accumulated excess credit, but meaningful credits that they can engage in toward the completion goal. And then the last pillar that CCA focuses its strategies within is support. Really, this is about addressing student needs and removing the barriers to academic success. And so when we have students who are unhoused or who are food insecure, we want to make sure that we provide basic need support, but then also there's active academic support, whether that's advising or coaching, and really proactive and intrusive advising is what we encourage. And then the last thing is 360-degree coaching. We don't only see the student as an academic, an individual on an academic endeavor, we also appeal to their financial, emotional, social, and other facets of themselves as well. So we're talking about holistic strategies that institutions across the nation are utilizing within purpose, structure, momentum, and support that really helps students excel and succeed in completion.
And Yolanda, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit from your perspective, like, what's your sense of like what percentage of colleges, universities are fully bought into college completion as their top priority?
To be perfectly honest with you, and this is just a guess, I mean, I think the greater percentage are bought in, but I think unfortunately we're held back by antiquated policies or practices because a lot of things are not codified into policy. It's just what we've always done or how we've always done it. And when you onboard a new person, you tell them this is the way we do it. And unfortunately, we pass on bad behavior. So that's one. The other thing is, I think that the perspective around the fact that every student who came to college came there with a goal, and their primary goal was to graduate. And so having a perspective when they walk in the door that I'm helping the student on a path to graduation has to be the mindset. So although I think there's sort of lip service to graduation and everyone knows that, we have to make sure our behaviors from day one, not in the 4th year or the 6th year, but our behaviors from day one or even before they even enter the campus. Once they're admitted, we're expecting the student to graduate. And that's why I say things like students should not have to apply for graduation. They already applied for graduation when they applied for admission. So those sorts of things we should really make a no-brainer so that we show students from day one that we expect them to graduate.
Great, thank you. So Quentin, you've been listening to Sue and Yolanda. Let's say it's 10 years from now and you are now a college president. You've had a really, really impressive career very quickly. So what would you want to see at your college? What sorts of supports? What would you want? What would be top on your list for your students?
I think top on my list for my students would honestly just be actively engaging and listening to students like live testimonies. I think that specifically hearing how students feel, especially because a lot of these policies that we're implementing, they directly affect students. And so I think students should have a say-so in how they are implemented and how they are practiced on the college campus. And I think specifically my work as an organizer for Nobody Fails at Pitzer, which was an initiative that I started with 4 other first-generation college students at Pitzer. I feel like that specific initiative kind of speaks to my recommendation into like actively engaging with students, listening to students. And so specifically, Nobody Fails at Pitzer was started when in March 2020, when we all were sent home when COVID first hit. And so Pitzer had implemented an opt-in grading policy where students could choose to do the traditional A through F grading scale or choose to do the pass/fail system. But we felt that this policy was highly inequitable because we did not all have the same access to resources that we did when we were on campus. You know, some students had to go home and take care of family members, and some students did not have adequate access to Wi-Fi and to laptop materials that we all did when we were on campus. And so it was kind of like, okay, it's framed and a rhetoric is used in terms of it's optional, but those students that come from those historically excluded or marginalized communities will be forced to choose the opt-in or the pass/fail system. And so through a lot of communication that we were able to have with the mobility of our initiative with staff, faculty, and administration, we were able to have conversations with them and communicate to them effectively how that specific policy was inequitable. And we were actually able to get that policy amended and got them to pass a universal policy. And so I think specifically, you know, those conversations with students can yield very great benefits because students are impacted by these policies as well. And so I think talking to them and hearing from their experience can foster a more inclusive and welcoming environment at the college as well, because I feel as though that my college cares about what I have to say. And so I think that is something that we can actively strive to work towards by actively engaging and listening to students and their lived testimonies.
Great, thank you, Quentin. So I'm now turning to some of the questions from our participants, and one that's been asked in a few different ways is around, you know, how can we better engage external groups in this effort around college access and completion, right? So we know that, you know, there's a lot high schools can be doing in colleges and universities, but there's a lot of other players that we could bring into this to support these sorts of efforts. So from community-based organizations, transfer agreements, employers. So for any of you, maybe Sue, I'll start with you. What do you think about sort of external groups sort of helping out and being part of the solution to these sorts of issues?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, from money, you know, so foundations, obviously, a lot of money's gotten concentrated in a few hands, and the reason why the taxpayers don't have as much money to give to schools is because money's been so concentrated in our society. So getting foundations to fund some of these initiatives is an obvious way to go. More coordination, especially I'd say at community colleges, between the institutions and the local job market. You know, we compared to across the world, there are examples of fantastic apprenticeship programs where school and work are braided together in a way that is very effective for both the student and the employer, who gets a chance to get to know a student and then hire them at the end of the process. And we could learn from that in designing programs that combine work experience with formal education in the classroom.
Great, thanks, Sue. Yolanda, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, interestingly enough, I'm at a meeting this week for over 30 organizations nationally that have come together. And these are membership-based organizations. So we serve collectively thousands of institutions. And so really trying to make sure that we, one, hear directly from students. So we've had discussions with students, but two, that we also place at the center the student, but also with input from all of the various stakeholders. And so we're represented by accrediting bodies, national associations and organizations, students, as well as employers, to make sure that the conversations continue. They cannot be a one size fits all. There are different contexts, political context and policy context for each state, but trying to figure out where there are similarities and how we can take best practices and learn from one another. And that's also what we really encourage at CCA, trying to serve as utilize a microphone and a megaphone. So talking to those institutions that are doing things well, and then really trying to share those best practices and data-driven practices with other institutions so that they can get to success faster.
Great, thanks. I think I'll wind up with one more question from one of our participants, which is a lot of this conversation has been about policies and practices, but what about supporting today's student who's struggling, like in the moment? What are some of the most effective short-term steps we can be focusing on to ensure that they are supported? So very much in the here and now. So Quentin, I think you're ready for it. I'm gonna go to you first. I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think specifically just reiterating the point that I made before about like actively engaging and listening to students, that can yield very beneficial effects. But I also think by actively having spaces for these students as well to have these conversations amongst other students and amongst other groups. And I think that having staff, faculty, administration, and students all in one forum and just having these conversations can just really help in that aspect, because communication can just lead to more benefits and to more like ideas and policies and practices. Because of course, as an institution, all institutions have to implement policies and practices. So of course, it's not all about policy and practices, but it kind of is, because those policies and practices really affect everyone in a college community. And so I think through those, we have to have different forums, different conversations, and different places on campus where people can feel vulnerable enough to voice their opinions and to voice their specific beliefs, and how we can all work together to come to a compromise. And I think specifically what I noticed is that a lot of university institutions, specifically through my research, is that it's not that institutions don't care what students have to say. I think that sometimes institutions are nervous to hear that students may ask for things that they really cannot fix in a snap of a finger. But I think by having those conversations and letting students know, we hear you, we value what you're saying, and we can come to a compromise amongst each other, that will create a relationship between them to continue working towards the betterment of the institution and a betterment of those students' experiences for college success. And so I think that that would be a way that I would think to just improve.
Great, thank you, Quentin. Sue?
I would say, as a first gen student myself, that institutions can focus on making sure that students know how to use and how to get at the resources that are theoretically available to them. So, many a first gen student has no idea what office hours are. And that the idea that you should chat with your professor sometimes is a norm that you can help to set. Helping people figure out, we're sitting in the middle of whatever bureaucracies are built up around us. And so in the moment, we can try to put on, the glasses and see the perspective of a student who's experiencing all of this for the first time, doesn't have a college educated parent to guide them through the process, and think about how to help them to the resources they need, given that they don't know where they are.
Great, thank you. And Yolanda?
I would just say to get to know your students, understand what their needs are. I've heard so many faculty members and administrators say that during COVID, when they got to actually peer into the homes of students, they were able to understand, oh, I didn't realize this student was also a parent or was taking care of their own parents. So they're a caregiver as well. Or I didn't realize that 7 siblings lived in the home. So understand who your students are and what their needs are. And then the last part I would say about that is then being anchored in community where there has to be some public-private partnerships. And so when you understand what the public resources are that are available, especially in that municipality or locality, being able to then match those with the needs of the students that you have. And so the more you know about what's available in the community, really inviting folks from the city or from the county into the institution to share more about the services they offer, and then providing safe spaces where students can actually meet with those individuals on campus rather than having to traverse the city to figure out where they are and meet with them. So those are some things I would suggest as well.
Great. Well, I hate to say it, but our time is coming to an end. So I want to thank very much Quentin, Sue, and Yolanda for taking the time to share your thoughts with us, your experiences. And I hope that those of you who've been with us have come away with a few things that you find to be inspirational and useful. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on Education Now, and have a good rest of your day, good evening, or a good morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.